Today on the Avenue Podcast, we're here with Scott Pieper, and we're going to be talking about cash flow. Nice to have you here, Scott.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit more about yourself. I know we've been working together for a little while now, and you help a lot of businesses with cash flow and funding issues, and we'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah. Well, first, I want to say thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to come talk to you. You guys have been a breath of fresh air for me working with a marketing agency or company. I started originally with the marketing agency when we first started doing our marketing, which was 6 or 7 years ago, which is entirely different than the way we even do it now. But it wasn't a great experience, and it was kind of problematic. You were sort of guided towards what you think you should do, and sort of everybody fit in a box. And so when you asked me to come down here and do this, I'd just be remiss if I didn't say thank you guys very much, because it's been such a breath of fresh air. Not only to work with you guys, but just to have an understanding. You feel like this interconnected. Sometimes I don't feel like if I have to give someone an entire overhaul of what we do and how our philosophy is, or sell you on our philosophy, then it's not the right fit. So like when you guys married into it, it was really reassuring. So
it's all about the right fit. I mean, we love working with you guys. You guys are super cool. And as you said, we're really married to what you guys do and the people you help. We're both within the contractor space, and we see how much help they need, whether it's on the marketing front or on the finance front. I mean, they need all the help they can get.
Yeah, and that's just an added bonus. The mere fact that you guys even work with the same type of customers is interesting. But your marketing philosophy is what I believe in my heart and soul is the way it works. Add value first. Give before you ask to receive. That's the core. That's how it goes. So
absolutely, man. Well, thanks for coming down. We're glad to have you here.
So I forgot your question. You wanted to know a little
bit
about
So tell us
me?
a little bit more about yourself, a little bit more about the company and why you started it, and just your background.
So I'm just a regular dude. I've worked a lot of different jobs. I'm married to my wife for 20 years this August. I have three awesome daughters that are 2 teenagers now, and one more. The third one's almost there. She's only got another year left. So they're keeping us really active and busy. They are really everything to me. They're what I work hard for and drive for and, struggle for. And so that's first and foremost. Secondarily, Mobilization Funding really was a product of exactly who I am. I'm always afraid to miss out on an opportunity. My wife might call that FOMO, since we've labeled my 16-year-old that. Now she has the same personality trait as me in that sense. But the way Mobilization Funding started is a friend of mine called one day. I was in med device sales. I spent most of my life in and around sales. Other than the 6 months that I spent in my degree, which was food, hotel, hospitality management, I worked for Aramark Corporation for 6 months at Disney World, which is what brought me from New York to Florida. And I realized quickly that I was not going to be happy in that world, and they weren't going to be happy with me. So it was good for me to get into sales. I bounced around a few different sales jobs, ultimately landed in medical device sales, which I thought was great. I spent better part of 20 years doing that in 2 different businesses, Angiodynamics and Stryker Orthopedics. I was fortunate enough to learn a ton about all aspects of sales, contracting, leadership, development. I had some really good mentors. But in the last 10 years, I basically was called 10 years ago from a friend of mine who said, hey, I got this idea. We're going to lend to construction contractors, coming out of the downturn. This is coming out of economic downturn 2012-13. He said, we're going to lend to commercial contractors. They need help. Balance sheets are impaired. No one's doing any work. The federal government's fueled the economy with all this opportunity. They can't get bonded, and they need some working capital. And I said, dude, you're crazy. There's no way we're going to be able to lend.
It's a little risky after such a downturn.
He's like, dude, why are you bursting my bubble? I said, man, look, my dad was in the contracting business. I understand it. It is tough. There's a problem there. But lending in that world, I can't even fathom it. He goes,
super risky business.
Yeah, he's like, all right, well, do you want to do it? I'm like, yeah, of course I want to do it. I mean, I'm not going to let you guys figure it out, and then I can't do it. So we made this little loan, and it worked out great, and we solved the problem, and we understood how it worked, and it was kind of the spearheading of what Mobilization Funding became. The principles of what we're doing are really the same exact principles of what we designed it to do from the very, very beginning. We do it in such a dramatically different way with different processes and different implementation as we do now. Some painful lessons and some good ones too, but just evolve. And the construction world's evolved too, depending on who you're working with and what kind of contractors and what type of, when I say kind, I mean like specialties are different, payment cycles are different, projects are different, government, private, I mean all that kind of stuff. And so that's how it really got started. And then at first I was just a passive, I don't even want to say investor, I was just passive because I knew some people, maybe we could put some money in. I knew some folks that might be in and around the construction world that could potentially be clients or others. And ultimately how I ended up in this role was maybe for another podcast or a whole other podcast on its own.
There you go.
I might share that story one day, which is interesting, but
phase 2.
Yeah, mobilization funding, that was really the birth of it.
Nice. So then what prompted you really to move forward into a full-time career within that space? I mean, it's one thing to do 1 or 2 loans here and there and really see that it works, and moving forward, despite having FOMO, into a full-blown idea and saying, I'm going to create an entire company out of this.
Well, I guess I'll have to share some of the story. So, 3 years in, we had an original partner who had this idea, basically, that I just described what mobilization funding is. And over the course of time, you learn not only about your business and not only that, but you also learn about partners. And partnerships and partners can all be different, and you have lots of different variations of that. And so this particular partner there was 4 of us originally. This particular partner that was running it was doing it all. And that had good to it and it had some bad to it. And so as we started to get larger and we wanted to put some, I call them rules, in place. Somebody should be different.
Yeah.
If one person's making all the decisions, someone else might want to handle all the money. If some person's handling all the money, someone else might want to make some different decisions. And so he didn't necessarily like all those things. And so it created some rifts. And long story short, we had a couple $1 million out in a portfolio of loans. And he quit and just didn't call anybody anymore. Just left, didn't talk. And so me and one other gentleman, Matt, who's still a partner today, jumped on top of this, $2 million worth of loans, and we figured it out, and we found the people, and we talked to all the people, and we made the loans work, and we made new loans, and we spent the better part of a good year and a half, figuring it out. And when I say figuring it out, I mean basically figuring out not the business, but figuring out where this money is, who these owners are, what did we make the loan about, why did they need it, and
figuring out how to run the business.
Exactly. And so what we learned afterwards, and we did all that well and got it all together, we learned, this isn't a bad business. Actually, it's a really good business. It was just not executed the way we designed it to be. Again, that's not anyone's issue or fault, or it wasn't nothing wrong with the original partner that just quit. I mean, he quit. That was a problem.
Different viewpoints. There's a way to do it, but at the end of the day, it's just differing viewpoints.
So we realized this is really a good opportunity, and let's create a business out of it. And so that's what we did. And we learned everything. We learned 80% of what we needed to know through that process. And it gave us the courage to initiate and start the business. And so that was the real genesis of it. Yeah,
I mean, there's really nothing like getting your ass kicked into gear, realizing, you don't have a choice. It's either figure it out or you're going to really crash and burn. And I think that's true in any business, in any space.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, I think people start business for different reasons. Sometimes you start a business just to keep your own paycheck. You realize you need a paycheck. That wasn't the case for us. This was more of an opportunity. And realizing it through struggle and learning it through struggle was what we learned is really we have great people here. All those stigmas around construction, they're not true. These are great people.
Couldn't agree more.
With pure intent, trying to do great things. They got a really screwed up industry for cash flow. It's totally different than every other business that you could possibly imagine. Matter of fact, I say this all the time, but if you took what the limitations in the cash flow cycle of construction and tried to overlay it any other regular business, most of them would fail.
Never work.
And so all those things where they can only invoice once a month, pay for all your costs up front. I mean, just wait for 4 layers of money to come off the job.
I mean, it's damn near impossible.
And then couple that with, it's not a couple $100. These are hundreds and thousands of dollars of project money or millions of dollars or tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars to build something, depending on what you're building. And so that adds an extra layer of stress and pain. So we realized quickly that these are great people doing great things, and how can we pour into that? And if we can pour into them and make it easier, not only by making a loan, but let's make the process easier. And then if we can make the process easier and be a source of capital to help fuel those problems, those cash flow shortages, then we can really add a lot of value with a product or service. I mean, it's easy to lend money, right? Anybody can kind of put money together and lend it out. But one, you want to get paid back your money, but you also want to add value to the person you're helping, because we're way more than just a lender. I always say our customers would describe us as someone who's pouring into them to provide and helping them with cash flow needs and service needs. And a lot of times that help isn't in the form of a loan. It's actually in a cash flow tool. It's in information. It's in an introduction to someone that otherwise they wouldn't have met before. It's they came to us for money, but it's not a perfect fit for that, and they don't actually need it, and we can help them negotiate how they should work with a different supplier in a different way. And so
it's really about relationships. I mean, it's just like, again, with any business, and I think you described it perfectly. In construction, it's a true testament to some of the best people that exist, because they're very salt of the earth. They understand their industry. They know their industry. They've been burned a lot of times, and they're huge on relationships. And that's true even on their projects. Really, a contractor is just as good as, worst subcontractor. Yeah. I think, again, that's true of all the partners that they work with. So I'm very interested in hearing more about how mobilization funding helps these contractors in a different way than, let's say, someone that's offering an MCA. That's a merchant cash advance for those not familiar with it.
Yeah, so a merchant cash advance, first, I think merchant cash advances will lend money to anybody. Construction's one. The first thing that we do is we care about the person that we're actually lending to. And that doesn't mean that every merchant cash advance person or other lender doesn't care. But what I mean is we're trying to figure out, what do they actually need the money for? Right. What is it project? What type of project? What type of money? When do they need it? How do they pay it back? What's their cash flow cycle? We don't say, oh, here's our loan program, figure out how to conform to it. We basically say, here's our loan program. Let me see if you have a project that we can actually help you with, and if it will conform, or we can tweak it to help you. It doesn't help a commercial contractor who gets paid once a month and can only invoice once a month to take a daily or a weekly payment from them, right? Yeah. So you have to understand, when do they need the money? It also doesn't help them that if they need $300,000 for a project over the course of a 2 month period, that you give them all $300,000 on day one and then charge them for $300,000 on day one when they don't really need more than $30,000 or $40,000 on day one. And then another $30,000 or $40,000 maybe 2 weeks later. Yeah. And then maybe $100,000 2 weeks after that to pay for the material they ordered on day one. So understanding that cash flow is important. It's so important that we created a tool that's specifically able to do that. And anybody can use it. They can download it off our website. Many people do, actually, that aren't even clients of ours. And so, candidly, we don't even know who they are. We build the cash flow for them automatically with the tool that we built. We email it to them, whatever email they put in, and we don't even know who their name is. Occasionally, some of those folks come back to us and say, hey, I've been using your cash flow tool for months. Some say, I just submitted a cash flow tool, but I also want to know, how does your loan program work? And we know. The folks that come to us and say, hey, I need a loan, and we give them the cash flow tool to use, basically what the cash flow tool does is, contractors, we've learned, are good at there's 3 key things they need to do to work on a project. 2 of them they're excellent at, and 1 of them they either don't know they needed or they don't have a good tool for, and that's the one we solve for. So the 2 things they're great at is they always have a great process for bidding it. Whether they bid it right, bid it wrong, doesn't matter. They have a good process to know how to put what the cost of it's going to be, and they're pretty good at it, even if they just been on a job so long and they sort of know it. Yeah. The second thing is they have to marry up what the work schedule is. I know the trades in front of me. I know about how much time it's going to take me. I can estimate my labor into that. The third thing that they don't do often, or don't have a good tool for, which I think is one of the most critical pieces, is how much of that money from my bid do I actually have to spend on this job before I actually get paid, number 1. Number 2, before the job will cash flow itself. And so that's what we tell them. We can show them with that tool, or they can use it and find out themselves. So, I like to use an example. You have $1 million job and $800,000 of cost. Okay, do I have to spend $200,000 of that $800 before I break even, or do I have to spend $800 of that $1,000 before I break even? 2 totally different projects, depending on whether you got to invest $200 or $800. So that cash flow tool will tell us that, and then it'll tell us also when and how much, and what does it need to be used for. And so if we can let customers and contractors grow by taking on work, but also sleep at night knowing they have payroll paid, their materials are paid, and we can be a source of capital to fill those cash flow gaps to get them from the start of the job to the point where it's cash flow positive, these guys can roll. Like they can hammer it and do as much work as possible. If they have the labor and they have the access to supplies,
they've got everything they need.
They can do everything they need.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, like you said, it's really not just being a source of capital, but it's being a key asset to their project. Whether they come to you for the funding piece, which is, you know, non-predatory like it is with MCA, where the goal is just, we'll fund anybody. I mean, it sounds very similar to the mortgage crisis that we had in 2008, where it's, let's just give money to everyone and see who's willing to pay it back, versus really becoming a partner and becoming vested inside that contractor's company and making sure that they're getting the right amount of cash that they need based on the phase of the project that they're currently at.
That's right. If you and if you're on the lending side and you're just looking at bank statements from a contractor and you see that they have $500,000 a month being deposited in their account, so therefore you can give them $500,000 a month, and you don't realize that $500,000 has 400,000 of it or more dedicated to materials, payroll, supplies, then you're just not, you don't care. It's actually not smart to do as a
You're not
lender.
doing your due diligence. I mean,
it's not smart, which is why the default rate's so high, but you're more importantly, you're not helping anybody.
Right. Well, that's really at the core. And I think that's probably why most of your clients choose you, is because you genuinely want to help them and you have your own skin in the game on their projects versus the MCA, where it's just, we'll give you the money and whatever happens, happens.
Right. And then we'll just take the money out of your account every day or every week.
No, that's really awesome. So we know about the cash flow tool. You recently wrote a book. It's called The Big Book of Cash Flow. So tell us a little bit more about that, why you wrote it and what's in the book. And, obviously don't give it all away, because I think it would be wise for anybody that's listening to download a copy of the book and read through it, because there's a lot of very valuable information in there.
Yeah, so I was challenged to write the book. I'm not a writer. I'm not an author. I was challenged to write it because as our company grew, more and more people would come in to the business. Not customers, but our team gets bigger. We went from 3 people to 6 to 8 to now 12 people on our team, and soon to be 14. And I would always be the person to train, right? And I'd explain it all and I'd do it all. And people and then I would do it again 3, 4, 5 times a day with new clients. And someone was like, well, do you get all this out of your head somehow? And I'm like, I don't think so. And they're like, well, you should really get this into a book. So that was the first time someone said it. The second time someone said it, and I ignored it. To me, I just didn't think I would ever, I don't know what I thought. I just didn't think, I was just happy I read, not let alone write something. But what the book really does, I realized that there's not a good way, even for our own team, to go figure it out without me explaining it. Particularly for construction or the cash flow cycle. I like to call it a revenue cycle. The revenue cycle of a business, revenue being a certain purchase order or a certain contract or a master service agreement, PO, whatever it may be. Nobody really explained how that specifically works in one concise, like what I would call layman's terms way. And so what I set out to do with the Big Book of Cash Flow was do exactly that. Here is what the cash flow cycle is. Here is why there's pain and why you feel that way. Why do you feel like you have all this great work and a big backlog and all these orders, but yet you feel like you're still working for the same paycheck, but you're 5 times the size? Why are you having a harder time sleeping now as a $5 million business or a $3 million business as you did when you were a $500,000 business? Why are these feelings the way they are? And I would just hear this nonstop from our customers. And so it was apparent to me because I've been having so many of these conversations and they're very congruent. The weird part is everybody felt like they might have been alone in that. Yeah. And so I wanted to put a book together that answered those questions, gave them a specific actionable advice they can take, but also give them specific resources that they can implement. So here's why you feel that way. Here's A, it's normal. B, this is the way it works. C, if you do have the access to the information, I also learned when we give these tools out to folks, these same contractors, they didn't know what to do or didn't know what they were feeling. They knew exactly what to do when it's sitting in front of their face. So when you're like, look, here's how much money you need, here's where it works, or boom, we can't help you with this loan because the real sticking point is your materials terms are 30 days and they need to be 45. Or if you could order your material and pay it X amount of time, or your labor is too expensive, or you don't have the same margin. They knew exactly how to fix that. Sometimes it was not do the project. Other times it gave them all the encouragement they needed to go back and renegotiate a term. It gave them the ability to shop a supplier, and they would do it. And I'd be like, this is amazing. I remember talking to people in our office, I'm like, look, we just gave them this cash until it came back, and bam, bam, and bam, they had all these new tools.
Like seeing that, free tools that you're giving to, again, it's not even really to sell them as much as it is to educate them and to help them, and seeing them utilize that and then take action. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, and our mission was to really, our mission is to help everybody we come in contact with. Mm-hmm. And why is it so basic and generic, as someone might say? Why is it not construction? Or it would be the best lenders in the world. It's none of that, because really, if you just help people that come into contact with you, regardless of how it happens, then they will, A, be better off. And that interaction can then spawn whatever it is you do. People will realize what you do. If you can help somebody with whatever product or service you have, it's great. But you don't need to take every person you meet and try to stuff them into your product or service.
Absolutely. And we always say, even in our industry, it's important to be, in a way, a fixer. It doesn't mean you can fix every issue for them, but it's when you become such a resource to your clients that they're hitting you up and they're saying, hey, do you know someone for this? Because they know you're well connected within the industry. For me, that's one of the most gratifying feelings that I ever feel, is when a client reaches out for something that could be completely unrelated to marketing, because they know I can be a resource to them. And I think we had that conversation before. I have a background in aviation, and you contacted me. You said, hey, do you know anybody within the jet charter industry? And that had nothing to do with the work we were doing together. You just knew a little bit about my background, and you figured, well, I'm going to ask him because he probably has the contacts. So I think as long as you can have that level of relationship with your clients, it doesn't become just, hey, I'm here to sell you a one service solution that's going to work for your business. It's, how can I truly help you in your business?
Yep. What I learned too is if someone contacts us and we can, at a minimum, be the last person they have to contact and explain their business and explain the problem and be like, exhausted having to do that. If we could just solve that problem, like be the last person they have to contact. Yeah. And it's because we can give them the nice, super warm introduction to the other person that is the helper, that can actually that has the solution they need. Mm-hmm. And we can create an email introduction that says, hey, Oliver over here needs X, Y, and Z. You're the perfect person for it. He's a great person. You're a great person. And we can tell that person on the other end of the phone, hey, you can trust them because you built a rapport with them over that last phone call. Yep. If you can just be the solution to that problem, that's an amazing gift that you can give to someone that's on the search for a problem fix, a fix, because they've called 50 people sometimes. Right. I mean, very rarely is it the first person you contact. Oh yeah, and each time you explain your problem, it's more daunting. It puts it more in the front of your head. It's more exhausting. It makes you more scared, more fearful, and all of a sudden you can be the solution to that. It's a great gift. Well, and especially in whether, again, it's finance or it's marketing, there's just so much out there. So much of it is noise. What they're going to try to do when they're selling that person that's dealing with an issue is try to fit them in that one-stop solution. At least most of the time, a lot of these companies operate in that same with that same MO, where they're just going to tell you, this is our solution. It's going to work for you. They're not bothered by actually listening to what the problem is. So when it's a referral and you're acting as a connector and you say, well, I've worked with them before and I trust what they do and they do good work, I mean, that goes so much further than any kind of testimonial you see online where you have no personal connection with that person. That's right. I think, again, being in a similar space, it really works in our favor to work primarily within one vertical, because at the end of the day, our clients talk to our other clients, and a lot of times it forces us to not have to do too much marketing other than just delivering good work and making sure that we just deliver on our promise from when we had our first conversation with that prospect client. And I think that's key. I think you hit the nail on the head. You're right. I mean, again, you're solving a problem that someone else has is a great gift every single time. And the more you become an expert in something, the more value you're going to have. Yeah. If you try to be too much to too many people, you're not going to be really anything to anyone. That's exactly right. You can't be everybody's solution. Right. So it's best to know what you're good at and really focus on that. That's right. So let's talk a little bit more about all these educational tools that you put out there. I mean, you do a great job of putting those out there on LinkedIn and on your different profiles. So what do you have in store for the rest of the year? I mean, is there any more tools that you have in mind, books, or tell us a little bit more about what you've got planned for this year? Well, we're launching this book, so we have a good, strong focus on that for this year to get that out. We continue to refine the cash flow tool probably a couple times a year. We started with a spreadsheet, literally a people always think you have to have this perfect solution. We started with the spreadsheet that we use. We put it on as a downloadable Excel file on our website. Then we realized that we're not going to be able to explain it to everybody because some people are going to wonder what it is. So we created literally a tutorial. We videoed like nice. one of our guys, Gene, decided he was going to put it on there, and he explained it to everyone and gave them a tutorial, the 10-page guide with some video that anyone can now download that and the Excel file. Mm-hmm. Then we realized that Excel can be daunting to someone. So we decided, you know what? Everybody knows how to do a bid, and everybody knows what schedule they need to keep, and they know when they need to pay people or not, or owe money to someone. They know what their terms are. So let's go back and let's create the tool that without someone having to create the spreadsheet or no spreadsheets, they could just answer questions. Right. And so we created that version of it and put that out this past year. And so that makes it even easier for someone. The next set that we're coming out with, really, I would say, is the book, a strong focus on that. We've created a consultative approach around cash flow, marketing, getting awareness of who we are and what we do out there. We have put panels of we did a live event in Dallas where we started to help talk about breaking through the conversations around construction, GC sub relationships, GC owner relationships. How do I get change orders paid? Can we get paid faster? Whose fault is it? So we put a live event together in Dallas back in early November that had general contractors, subcontractors, suppliers, bankers from the construction world that finance the projects, all the way up to the architects, the accountants. We put them all on a 9-person panel. Nice. and suppliers, and we talked about all the problems. And it was eye-opening to hear the banker who finances the $50 million project explain how fast he wants to get the money out. And everyone's like, fast? What are you talking about? Like, yeah, I'm a lender. I want to make a loan. I want to get this money out.
That's how they get paid.
But why doesn't it go out faster? And he explains, I need the right paperwork. Paperwork has to be perfect. I can't get it released without this and sign off. So all of a sudden you start realizing in this room how much easier where everybody you know what? Okay, it isn't the bank's fault.
Yeah.
The GC isn't really holding my money per se. The bank isn't holding the GC's money. We just need this stupid paperwork. And if I make this mistake, everybody started to realize basically A, where they fit in the equation, B, what they can do to make the equation better, and then hold each other accountable to it. So it was really cool. So we want to start doing that more. We're going to do an event coming up in the Washington, D.C., Virginia area.
Awesome.
Same type of event. It's going to be focused on change orders. It's going to be through the Subcontractors Association there. And we're excited to do that. We'll probably do that. Definitely that event. We might do one more too also next year, if not two, if we can.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like you got a pretty busy 2023 ahead of you.
Yeah. And we moved into a new office, so that's been exciting too.
Yeah, and we're excited. Tell us a little bit more about what you have planned as far as the art goes in the office. When you told us about it, we thought it was just really badass. So
yeah, so we realized that construction is one of those industries, and this came out in the live event in November. There's a labor shortage in construction right now. There's a stigma around the fact that going into construction is almost like, you couldn't do this, or this, so your only thing you're going to be able to do is construction. And I made a comment there that I had heard from a meeting I went to that was basically construction is one of the few fields, if you think about it, where you can put a shovel in your hand, put a hammer in your hand. You can be an executive in finance. You can be an executive in operations. You can do estimating. You can do accounting. You can be a CEO. Yeah. You can sell a business. You can buy a business. I mean, you can do anything you want inside that industry. And you can't say that for every single industry.
Yeah.
And you can also do it as a starter level leadership position, a medium level leadership position, a very high level leadership position, a private company, a public company. You can do it in any aspect of anything. So, there's not many industries of that.
Oh,
absolutely. So then the second thing is really construction is the only industry I can think of that impacts every single person in the entire country. So where we're sitting today, construction had to build it. Where you're going, construction had to build the road.
Oh, yeah.
Every business everywhere has to deal with construction. And so construction is really the backbone of America from our experience, from my opinion. So what we focused on is construction made America, and American construction is the best and the brightest, and we've done that, and we got to go back to that, and we're going to help work and preach that for our customers so that we can have more talent come into the construction industry by telling them the truth, that there's a lot of opportunity there. It's not ditch digging only.
Right.
You can start. It's the one place you can start digging a ditch.
Right. And
make great money, and end up doing whatever you want to do from there in any capacity, math, science, whatever it is you want to do, you can do. And so we're going to focus heavily on that. We've commissioned an artist to help us illustrate that in our new office with some pretty cool pieces that I'm excited to share, and we'll bring out soon. And we'll introduce you to the artist too, because she's amazing, and she probably illustrates it some of the best I've ever seen, and I'll be excited to share that with everyone when it comes out, particularly when we illustrate the art. But that's our focus: construction made America and American construction, and we think our goal is to help our industry come back and with the best, biggest, and brightest talent, so they can keep performing.
And I think that stigma has become, a real problem, especially with the younger generation. There's actually a program that we're involved in with Riverview High School in Sarasota. It's called the Trades and Construction Academy at Riverview High School. And essentially what they did is they hired somebody whose background was in construction to be the teacher, and these kids have to apply to be within that program. And it's not GPA driven, it's really motivation driven, and who are the students that are going to want to apply themselves and see a future in the trades industry. And they had, I think, 120 applicants for 60 slots. And these are with younger audiences where, a lot of times the parents are pushing college, they're pushing law school and doctorate business degrees. So it was really just super cool to see that so many of these kids are wanting to make that transition to go towards the trades, because that's the reality. Like you said, there's a huge lack of labor in the trades industry. And frankly, the notion of, well, you got to go be a lawyer, you got to be a doctor to make good money, and that's not as true anymore. And construction is truly one of the industries where you can make the most money, but best of all, you can find something that you're truly passionate about. And that's really the best of both worlds, is you get to take home good pay, but you also get to do something that you love doing.
So true. I mean, here's the reality. You can go, if you're two 18-year-olds right now on the same path, one leaves and goes into trade school, one leaves and goes to be, get their bachelor's and on to be an accountant, right, and get their accounting degree. 5 years later, the accountant enters the workforce with probably up to $200,000 worth of debt, someone spent $200,000 to get the education, and they're going to make somewhere between, at the moment, maybe $65,000 to $100,000, depending on where you are in the country and what you're doing. Or you get out of the electrical trade school somewhere in 6 months to a year. You have a license. You get an apprentice position. Within a year, you could be making over $100,000 a year. 4 years later, you've now made $400,000 a year, with no debt. So you have $400,000 and no debt, or you could have $200,000 of debt and not even $100,000 salary. I mean,
right.
Now your $400,000, if you save some of it's working towards. I mean, you can really have a great life and experience that, and then you can piggyback that experience in and around the business into management roles, leadership roles. You can be educated through your business, through the company, to do all different types of things, and then at that point, you can go back to school.
Right.
And if you want to get an accounting degree, you could get an accounting degree at the same exact time, which you could do online, and or whatever trade, whatever specialty it is. Now, if you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant, you're going to need to go to school.
You don't have a choice, right?
Yeah, you need to have some baseline of education. You don't really, actually. If you're a lawyer, you just need to pass the exam.
Right, and there's a few states where you don't even need to go to law school. I think as long as you can do a mentorship or an apprenticeship with an attorney for a few years, as well as pass the bar, you're able to get your license.
That's right. Yeah, now you're going to be a special individual, not to have to be taught how to do that, but that's different.
But it's possible. It's all about motivation and drive, and whether that's true in construction or truly any other industry, the outcome is going to be based on how motivated you are and what you want out of it. So, Scott, thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate having you on the podcast.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.